Good morning.
Good morning.
And can you tell me your name?
My name is Jane Nieman.
And Jane, where do you work?
I'm not working
Okay.
since 2005.
Where did you work in 2005?
For the first 5 months of 2005, I was at GlaxoSmithKline.
You're married?
Yes, I am.
Look, one of the reasons I ask is there are documents with your name on them, and it looks like your name used to be Jane Corey.
Correct, yes.
Is that right?
Yes, yes.
So you moved into the safety group in 1993.
Yes.
And you were there, were you there the rest of your career with GSK in some form or fashion?
In the safety group?
Yes.
Was I in the safety? Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I was.
Safety and pharmacovigilance, are those synonymous or similar?
Yes.
Okay. Did GSK give you any further training or education or send you to school or do anything formally to prepare you to be a safety person in their department?
Yes.
When you left in 2005, you were Director of Evaluation and Training for Global Clinical Safety and Pharmacovigilance at GlaxoSmithKline, is that right?
Yes.
When you were there, how did it work if somebody called in with an adverse event report? How did that work?
My memory of the process is the information would come in. In the U.S., there was a call center, so a report could be called in. People in the call center would take the details of that called-in event, and often at that stage it's minimal information. It could have been a literature report, it could have been a report from a regulatory authority, or it could have been a written-in report from a consumer or a physician. So the ways in which a report came in were numerous, but they would eventually end up in the safety group with one of these safety scientists, and they would have a piece of paper in front of them with the information that they had to enter. They would enter that onto the database, our safety database. For certain events, actually no, I'll take that back. They would enter it to the database. They would then print out the regulatory form from the database, and the case would be reviewed. I recall that if it was serious, it would definitely be reviewed by the safety physician. I don't remember if that was done if it was a non-serious report.
Okay, so... go ahead.
Okay. They would then work with the safety physician to agree any follow-up that was needed, and the follow-up would be requested.
Now, let me stop you here for a second. Follow-up with the patient or the reporter?
With the reporter.
I'm just sitting here thinking to myself, you've got somebody calling in, you've got a data entry scientist assigned to it, and then if it's serious, you have a physician, two different people assigned to look at this case report, right?
I think it was very much a team. I think that was really how they worked.
Okay.
It was a team approach to a case.
So a team is assigned then to the case, right?
Mm-hmm.
It would seem to me that one of the purposes of the team being assigned to the case was to try to figure out whether or not the adverse event was related to the drug.
Right.
Right?
Correct.
And so I'm wondering how that gets accomplished.
That comes back to what I said. I think and I think anything you come down to a causality comes back to a physician. That comes back to what I said. The physician would look at the case and they would form a medical opinion as to whether there was a possible, probable, no causality.
Now, the physician that would do what you just described would be a medical doctor that was employed by GlaxoSmithKline. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So you have a degree in pharmacology from the University of London.
Correct.
And you got that in 1985 or 6?
1985.
And then it says you went to become a research assistant for Sandoz Institute for Medical Research and Neuropharmacology, is that right?
Yes.
Now, Sandoz is also a pharmaceutical company.
Yes.
They're a Swiss company, aren't they?
Yes.
You spent 4 years as a research assistant for that pharmaceutical company?
Yes, I did.
and then you went on to become a clinical information scientist at SmithKline Beecham from 1990 to 1993. Is that right?
Yes.
And that's in the United Kingdom.
Yes.
What is a clinical information scientist?
In that role, this was an internal medical information group. So they were not the group that when we hear medical information, you traditionally think of the groups where people can call in and get answers to questions, external people.
Yes.
That was not this group. This was an internal medical information group where we would provide evaluated information on SmithKline Beecham products to SmithKline Beecham personnel. And I worked on cardiovascular and inflammation and tissue repair products in that role.
So, Ms. Nieman, I want to hand you a document that's called Entitled Paroxetine in Pregnancy. I've marked it Exhibit 1221 and ask you if you have seen that document over the past few days in your meetings with lawyers.
Yes, I have not seen this.
Do you remember this document? Do you remember reviewing this document called Paroxetine in Pregnancy?
I don't remember doing it, but I can see that I did it.
That's your handwriting?
It is my handwriting.
And actually on the first table, up at the top, it says there have been 8 reports of spontaneous abortion following exposure to paroxetine. These cases are tabulated below, and then we've got them all first trimester. Do you see that?
Yes.
Did it mean anything to you at the time in your role that an association with paroxetine was reported from one of these abortions?
In my role, well, first of all, I don't have a memory of this report. Clearly, I reviewed it, so I can't comment on that specific case. Back in 1996, it was all, as I remember it, and again, this is a long time ago. Reports would come into us with a reporter assessment of causality, and we would always, we clearly must have entered it onto the database. So that report must have come into us with either the reporting physician or whoever the reporter was, thinking that that event was related. What we moved to in later times was that any spontaneously reported, and just going back, even if a reporter had said it was unrelated or they didn't specify, that didn't mean to say that we thought it was unrelated or unspecified. We made our own judgments.
So if they receive an adverse event report and it's a spontaneous abortion, it's a congenital abnormality, whatever it is, and the reporter says, I don't think it's related, or I have no reason to believe it's related, or I simply don't know, GSK doesn't simply accept that and move on. They do an independent scientific evaluation of whether or not there's a connection.
Yes, that's my recollection of this period of time when we would enter a reporter's causality assessment.
But they use their own expertise as a manufacturer of drugs with all the resources they have, the doctors that work for them, the scientists that works for them, the medical library, the literature review. They use everything that they have at their disposal to reach their own determination and causality versus some mother who may work at a store and might not have all those things at her disposal. Is that accurate?
I think they are making a medical assessment of a case. That's what they want to do.
What's wrong with what I said?
Nothing's wrong with what you said. I just want to reiterate that they take each case on a case-by-case basis, the individual circumstances within that case, the patient, what they were exposed to, and make a judgment on that. They're not saying they're not thinking they're better or worse than the lady at the drugstore.
What is an acceptable rate, in your opinion, if you know, of simply not knowing what the outcomes of these pregnancies are? It looks like 186, about 40% were unknown in this report from 96.
Sorry, I don't have a number for an acceptable rate.
You don't remember whether there was one at GSK where we just say 40% is good enough or 60% is good enough?
I was never aware of a number where we said that was okay.
Okay.
I don't recall. I don't recall whether there was or was not a number.
Do you remember having any goals that you wanted to try to attain?
For any case or for pregnancies?
For pregnancies. I'm limiting my question to pregnancy outcomes now.
I don't remember if we had any goals.
And in this report from 96, it's clear to me that 186 out of the 385 women that called you voluntarily and said, I got pregnant while on your drug, that 186 of them, you didn't know what happened to their babies, right?
That's what it says in this report. We don't know the outcome of the pregnancy. But even in follow-up, we can't enforce them to respond to us.
Somebody has to write down what their estimated date of delivery is, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody then has to call or write a letter around that time to the doctor or the patient who has already voluntarily given you information about them, right?
Yes.
And follow up and find out what happened to that baby, right?
Yes.
Somebody has to spend the time, effort, and money at GSK to accomplish that.
There should be a process in place, whereby that happens.
It's also something called clinical trials, isn't there? Mm-hmm. Clinical trials are where women not only voluntarily subject themselves to a GSK medication, but where they regularly and in writing agree to do certain things to be in these trials, right? Mm-hmm. These are women that during the clinical trials you have regular and consistent contact with while they're in your clinical trial.
Yes.
I've got another report. This is Exhibit 1203. This is I believe it's a 98 report, this Exhibit 1203. And up at the top, it says Alan Micallef's comments, 11 March 98. Do you know who Alan Micallef is?
Yes.
Did he work in the United Kingdom?
Yes. And the French local.
Okay.
He was head of the French safety unit and then came to Harlow.
So he was a safety person at SmithKline Beecham.
Yes, he was a physician, is a physician.
This is a similar report to the one we just looked at, right?
It involves patients who had paroxetine during pregnancy.
Only now we have more.
Yeah.
So we're going all forward in time.
Yeah.
Is that the right way to calculate these percentages from a safety perspective? If you're looking for safety signals, if you're looking for trends, do you calculate the percentage based on outcomes that you don't know about?
Again, I think you have to take each report on. I wasn't writing this report. I'm not familiar with who requested the data, how the data was requested to be presented. All I can see is that is what they have done at this time, is that the percentage figures they've provided are based on the total number of reports. They have stated how many unknown outcomes they have, so they're being transparent with that, so anybody who would want to make a different assessment could do, and perhaps they do later on in the report, I don't know.
Does that make any sense to you?
The way they've presented it appears to be that they've done it accurately.
Can you flip to the next page? Because this is number of reports by outcome and source. And you see it says spontaneous. You and I talked about that earlier. That's the women calling up, right?
Or physicians or pharmacists or anybody.
Sure, it's somebody voluntarily calling in, right?
Yeah.
And then under clinical study, these are the women that you and I talked about earlier that it should be easier to figure out the answer to this with these women, right?
Yes, we have more control
Sure.
of their data, yeah.
And the unknown outcome in the clinical study is 13, right?
Yeah.
And then there's 3 elective terminations in the clinical study, right?
Yep.
1 medical termination, and 1 ectopic pregnancy. Those are all in the clinical studies, right?
Yeah.
So really it's about 50% of the outcomes in the clinical studies are unknown, right?
Yes. In this particular study.
And if you look up, I don't have it on the screen, I'm going to put it up here, but Mr. Micallef has written unacceptable, hasn't he?
Yes.
He said it was unacceptable, didn't he?
That's his comment.
This is number of reports by outcome in country. An unknown outcome by country, 92 out of the 203 unknown outcomes were the United States. You see that?
Yes.
So almost 50% of the unknown outcomes are from the United States, according to this table, right?
That's what, yes.
Okay.
That's what it...
Can you think of a reason why it would be that high in the United States?
I can't think of a reason without... I mean, if it had been recently launched in the US, which I don't think it had just been recently launched.
It had not.
No. I don't have an answer for that.
What about just poor follow-up? Is that a reason?
I can't speculate as to that. I know they had follow-up procedures in the US, but I can't speculate or make a judgment.
So the rest of the world's follow-up rate to unknown outcome or unknown outcome rate is 27%, and the United States is 56%, about double the rest of the world. Does that sound right?
That's what these numbers show here, yes.
Yes. That's what the numbers show.
These numbers show.
That's not anybody's opinion, right?
Right, no, that's the numbers here on
That's
this
a
piece
fact.
of paper. On this piece of paper.
Yes. And I didn't write this piece of paper, right?
Right.
Who wrote it? If we look at the author, it's Dr. Jasna Knizovic, who you talked about earlier, right?
She appears to be the signatory. I guess the author was Julie Nash.
Why is it double the rest of the world on unknown outcomes?
I simply can't provide you with a reason. I can't.
This is Exhibit 1223. It says it's from Ian Hudson. Do you know who he is?
Yes.
And by the way, this does say February 2nd, 2000, about 2 years later. Almost exactly 2 years later, right?
Yeah.
Who is Ian Hudson?
Ian Hudson at that time was the global head of GCSP by then.
Global
He was
clinical.
the global head of clinical safety.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's a big dog.
He was the boss. Group.
And this is Paroxetine PSUR periodic safety update reports for pink slip review. You see that?
Yeah.
And the 4th paragraph down, I want to call your attention to that. It says, I think we need to make more effort to follow up these pregnancies. Knowledge of outcome in only 30%. We need to do more here. And then it's not for this PSUR. Now, knowledge of outcome in only 30% of the cases is actually going backwards, not forwards, isn't it?
I don't understand.
Yeah, let me explain it to you. We've been talking about those other reports. Those other reports, their knowledge of outcome of pregnancies in just the previous one was 60%. It was 39% unknown outcome, which means 60% known outcome, right?
Yes.
Okay. Ian is saying here, our knowledge of outcome is only 30% in pregnancies. That's what he's saying, isn't he?
That's what this piece of paper says, yes.
So I'm back to the question that I asked you a couple hours ago, which is, what is the percentage you strive for?
I don't recall a given number. I just know we continually strived to get the most we could, to get the best we could.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out, what are you striving for? When you strive for something, usually I have a goal. My goal is I want to get someplace, and I strive to get that place. You're just telling me you're striving to get somewhere. You don't even know where you're striving to get. It's just better than you used to be doing, right?
I think we were striving to get the best information we could on a given case.
Okay. Well, Dr. Michaeloff said in the clinical trials that that number was unacceptable. Ian Hudson says 30% knowledge of outcome on this PSUR is unacceptable. I mean, I'm trying to figure out who's running the show at GSK and who's telling you and the employees what the acceptable number is.
If you ask, I don't. As I said, I don't recall that any. I don't recall, and that's not to say it never happened. A specific number that someone told us to strive for.
That seems odd to me. Doesn't that seem odd to you that we're going to do? We don't have a number we're striving for.
As I said, I don't recall it. I don't recall it.
I understand you don't recall it, but my question now is: doesn't that seem strange to you that there's no goal to be set on percentage of follow-up with unknown outcomes of pregnancy?
There may have been a goal. But perhaps not with a number attached. I don't recall whether we had a goal or whether that number was.
So if I knew about 95% of the 520 pregnancies versus 60% of the pregnancies, that's better for safety, isn't it?
I wouldn't use the word better. I would say it would give us more information to consider in an evaluation. It may or may not be useful information in the formation of a conclusion. So I wouldn't want to say it's better or worse. It would give us more.
You're going to have to explain that to me. Explain to me why not having more information about pregnancy outcomes is not better than having less information.
But I think you have better in what context? It gives us.
Let me give you the context. You just asked me that. The context is trying to figure out whether or not our drug is inducing birth defects in children. That's the context. Mm-hmm. So I want to know whether or not you agree or disagree that knowing about 95% of the outcomes is better than knowing about 30% of the outcomes.
Again, I say it gives us more information. The quality of that information is a factor. I don't want to use the word better or worse. I'm just saying that the more follow-up you have, the more information you have to review when you're considering an issue with a product.
Okay. How about good? Is good a word I can use?
It was good to get as much information as we can.
We can use the word good.
You can use any word you want. I'm just saying I don't feel comfortable using that word better or worse.
Okay, so I want to throw those out for a second. Would it be good for you to do your job to have more information about pregnancy outcomes instead of less information about pregnancy outcomes?
Yes. Yes.
You actually were part of a pregnancy follow-up working group, weren't you?
I don't recall that I was.
Really? Let me show you a document. This is Plaintiffs Exhibit 1204. It's a PowerPoint done by you, and the title of it is Pregnancy Follow-Up Working Group. And you see it says Pregnancy Follow-Up Working Group, Jane Corey. That's you, right?
Yep.
And it says Worldwide Clinical Safety, International Safety Meeting, 13 April 2000, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember anything about this?
I remember presenting these slides on behalf of the working group.
Okay.
My recollection is that I was not on the working group.
So you would have been just the person that presented the information?
That's my knowledge of this situation, yes.
And your objective, if we look at the next slide, your objective is to review current processes and propose methods which may improve the percentage of pregnancy cases for which we obtain follow-up outcome information, right?
That was the objective of the team that I'm presenting.
The Ian Hudson document we just looked at was February 2nd, 2000, and this is a couple months later. Is that right?
Sorry, I can't read. Is 2000 is the date of the meeting? Yes, I can't read it. I'm sorry.
Well, April 13th, 2000, is that what it looks like?
Yes.
Okay. So that would kind of stand to reason then, or be logical, that Ian Hudson, who's currently concerned with the issue in February, would ask you to present on the issue in April.
What's likely in my mind is that after this memo, this email in February 2000, is that a team was formed to look into the issue of follow-up with pregnancies. The team made their findings, and then they wanted to present at this meeting, and I was asked to present on their behalf.
So you got the next slide is current metrics, spontaneous reports, and you or somebody on the team put together this slide that you presented for pregnancy outcomes year by year. Is that right?
Yes.
And so in 97, you knew about the pregnancy outcome for 58% of the cases of pregnancy, this says, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And 1998, it goes down to 45%, right?
Yep.
1999, it goes down to 38%, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, from 97 to 99, would you consider this an improvement or a not improvement?
We are clearly getting a lower percentage of outcomes available on our pregnancy reports in that period.
Are you getting better or worse?
We are getting less outcome information, so we are getting worse at getting outcome information.
This is Plaintiffs Exhibit 1206. And it says, I know. It says LOC, locality on the left. Do you see that?
Yep.
And then it's got abbreviations just going across. And it's got short description, and the first one is unrelated. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
And then the next description is unlikely, possible, probable, almost certain, no, unknown, and not accessible. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar with these terms?
I'm remembering now these terms, yes. Yes, I'm familiar with the terms, sorry, but in the context of this, yes, it's coming back to me.
And do you recall this? Because you were there when this was used, I believe the evidence is about to show. Do you recall these being the terms that GSK used in assessing causality?
Yes, I recall these as terms that both were used within the company and also by reporters outside of the company.
Okay.
Yeah.
These are terms that are used in the pharmaceutical industry to assess causality.
When having assessed causality. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the first one we see up at the top there is unrelated, which is easy to understand, right?
Mm-hmm.
That means there's no relationship between the outcome and the drug, right?
There's no reason to suspect. On the evidence that we have, there's no reason to suspect.
Right.
Yeah.
And the next one is unlikely, which means it's, maybe there's some reason to suspect it, but it's unlikely that the outcome is related to the drug, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Is that yes?
Yes.
And then the next one is possible. It's possible that the outcome and the drug are related, right?
Yeah.
And then next is, in the hierarchy, is probable. It's probable that the outcome and the drug are related, right?
Yes.
And then it's the last one, and not the last one, but the next one is almost certain. It's almost certain that the outcome and the drug are related, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then we have no, unknown, and not accessible, right?
Yes.
It's a way that you recorded the causality assessment that was made. Is that right? let's put this aside for a second, and I want to ask you a question about a MedWatch report. Can you tell the jury what a MedWatch report is?
A MedWatch report is the format. It's the output format of a report of an adverse event that goes into the FDA.
Okay. So MedWatch, and I've got one up here. This is actually one that you filled out or has your name on it, which is why I picked it.
It has my name on it because I was head of the group at that time. So I didn't fill it out. I just want to make that clear. I sent it under my responsibility.
Thank you. I was fairly certain you didn't fill it out.
Okay.
All right. But it does have your name on it.
Yeah.
And the drug, you see the drug there is Paxil, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to read it on the screen into the record, and you correct me if I'm wrong. But this Section 5 is the description, event, or the problem. And then it's got the report number. Do you see that?
Yes.
It says report 200-101-4040-1 describes the occurrence of a terminated pregnancy in a female of unknown age prescribed paroxetine, Paxil for panic disorder. This report was received from the patient and has not been confirmed by a physician or other healthcare professional. Concurrent medications and medical conditions were not known. 4.5 years ago, the patient started Paxil, dose unknown. Since taking Paxil, the patient noted that she had been panic-free and has been able to go on with a normal life. Patient discovered she was pregnant in December 2000 while being treated with Paxil. However, she reported that at 6 months gestation, the pregnancy had to be terminated because the fetus was diagnosed as having truncus arteriosus. Her physician told her that the child would not lead a normal childhood and would most likely not make it through the open heart surgery that he would need as soon as he was delivered, if he was able to make it to that time. And that was all in quotes, wasn't it?
Yes.
About the doctor.
Yes.
Paxil therapy continues. The patient noted, I am in no way insinuating that your product did this to my child. Additional information has been requested. I read all that right.
Yes.
This is labeled, where is my highlighter, as a medically serious report. You see that?
Yes.
And that's true, right? This would be a medically serious report.
Yes.
And then the next exhibit that I have looks to me to be, and this is 1207, it says it's an international event report. Do you recognize this?
Yes, I recognize the format of the report.
Okay. And this is a GSK document, right?
Yes.
Now, I think we're going to see in a second that this is actually related to the baby that was aborted, okay? It's a 2, and I think the mother is going to be 1. Is that consistent with your recollection?
It's coming back to me now, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It says date received June 7th, 2001, right?
Yes.
So the date the report is received is June 7th, 2001. That's when whoever found out about this woman who decided to terminate her pregnancy, right?
That's the date they received the information, yes.
Now, from a safety standpoint, from a pharmacovigilance standpoint, a mother calling in and saying she took Paxil and her baby got truncus arteriosus and it was so bad that she made the decision to terminate her baby, to terminate her pregnancy and end her baby's life, that is something that should be taken very seriously by GSK, isn't it?
Yes.
That is probably understandably a heart-wrenching decision for a mother to make, isn't it?
Speaking as a mother, I would find it a heart-wrenching decision.
Probably doesn't get any worse than that, does it?
It's a difficult decision.
Yes. And so this woman understandably is calling GSK and quite frankly is saying she doesn't think that she's not insinuating, she says, that it was the drug that caused her baby's birth defect that ended in her baby's life being taken. She actually says that, doesn't she?
That's what Yes, that's what the report says.
But as you told me some hours ago, GSK doesn't take that at face value. They go further than what the reporter says, right? They do their own internal investigation, don't they?
They do. They do an internal medical assessment based on the information they have on the case. Yes.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to show you another exhibit. This is Exhibit 1213. This is, up at the top, you'll see it's the same case number that I read into the record, the AO348482B, and this is off GSK's internal database. So this will tell you that we're talking about the same person, the same patient. And the date created, you'll see here up in the right-hand corner, is June 13th, 2001. You see that in the right-hand corner?
Yes. Yeah.
And the sex is male. Do you see that?
Yeah.
This was a baby boy. And if you go down to congenital anomaly, it says yes, doesn't it?
Yes.
And 2 lines down, it says relatedness, assessment to medication. It says almost certain, doesn't it?
Yes.
And it says the case type is a spontaneous report. Right?
Yes.
And down at the bottom, it says local causality recorded, and the answer is yes. Right?
Yes.
Let's talk about that. This is off GSK's database. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
And then the case narrative, as you'll see there on page 2, is exactly the same as was sent to the FDA, right, that we've been looking at.
Yes.
And then we've got another finding down below of relatedness to medication, almost certain. Do you see that?
Yes, I see that.
Can we tell in looking at this document what the name of the person is that's making the determination that this truncus arteriosus is almost certainly caused by Paxil?
No, I don't see the name of the person that made the assessment, causality assessment.
As luck would have it, believe it or not, in the last hour, as I was asking you questions about this woman who had a baby with the truncus arteriosus, GSK mailed a friend of mine the actual backup data for this case. So I'm going to show it to you and see if you recognize it. I marked it as Exhibit 1224, and I saw it for the first time about 25 minutes ago. So the first thing I want to ask you about is actually the first page in that stack, and it says, I've got it up on the screen here, it says it's an adverse experience cover sheet. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
And the PRX number, you see that 200-101 4040-2?
Yes.
And I just want you to look at the MedWatch report that's also in this stack, the hard copy, just to compare it if you need to, so we can be satisfied that we're talking about the same case, the truncus arteriosus that we were talking about before lunch. And that's true, isn't it?
It's the same number.
Oh, okay. All right. And then we see the subject is the same, and it says this email was received by one of our external websites, and Glenna at CRC. And then we go down and it says the contact name, and that is redacted. The woman who called in or wrote, her name is redacted, her email address is redacted, and then the question comments is, please someone respond to me with 2 exclamation points, right?
Yes.
And then let's look at that whole thing next. It says my name is, and that's redacted. It says, I was diagnosed with panic disorder about 4.5 years ago. Since that time, I've been taking Paxil, which is truly a miracle drug. I've been panic-free with this drug and have been able to go on with a normal life. I was married in October of 2000. My husband and I found out we were pregnant at Christmas time. I was so excited. I love children. The only problem is that I carried the baby to 6-month gestation, and that had to have and that had to have a termination. I think it should say, and then had to have a termination. The doctors diagnosed my son with truncus arteriosus. They said he would not lead a normal childhood and would most likely not make it through the open heart surgery that he would need as soon as he was delivered, if he was able to make it to that time. To say the least, I was absolutely distraught with this news. I thought this was something that I did. Was it because I stayed on the Paxil for selfish reasons? I wanted to know if you could direct me to any information you might have of any woman that have taken Paxil and still had healthy babies. My husband and I are ready to try again to get pregnant in the next month or two. I am so nervous. I don't want to stop taking my miracle pill. But then again, if there is a chance that this might hurt or affect the baby, that's the next page, there's a chance that it might hurt or affect the baby, I want to know up front, and I will somehow stop taking it for the time being. Please contact me as soon as possible. I love everything this drug has done for me. I am so thankful that your company had this available for me. I just want to continue to have a normal life and have the child that I always wanted. Please contact me as soon as possible. And then the rest is redacted. And she says, please don't forget about me. And thanks you. You see that? On Friday, June 1st, 2001, she writes, this response is in regards to an email that I had sent you. It says preciously. I think it means previous. She meant previously. I was asking to see if you have any or in the process of any clinical trials for women who are currently on Paxil and pregnant. I wanted to find out information to see how many women were on Paxil during pregnancy and if they were able to successfully have healthy babies. I am in no way insinuating your product did this to my child. I love the product, and I don't think I could have gotten through my panic attacks without the wonderful help of this miracle drug. I just want to start to try and get pregnant again soon. I do not want to put my unborn child through anything that would hurt him or her. Please, if you do not have this information, where is this information held? Does anyone do studies like this? Please, any information you may give me would be great. Thanks again for your help. And then her name is redacted. Those are good questions, aren't they?
I think they're natural questions to ask in that situation.
But she wants to know, essentially, it looks like, whether or not there are any studies showing whether or not Paxil is safe to use in pregnancy, right?
I don't know what she's asking in this situation.
Okay. What she says was, I want to find out information to see how many women were on Paxil during pregnancy and if they were able to successfully have healthy babies, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then she asks about, are there any studies that are being done? And she asks about clinical trials before that sentence and asks about studies after that sentence, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Do you know whether GSK had undertaken to do any of the studies she's asking about in June of 2001?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Do you know, as you sit here today, whether or not GSK ever voluntarily undertook a study to look at what Paxil was doing to pregnant women?
Retrospectively or prospectively?
Yes, ma'am.
No.
Any study?
I'm excluding the internal reviews we've discussed so far. I don't think of those as studies. They're right. Okay. No.
No. Those aren't studies, are they?
No.
No.
I just wanted to clarify.
Was this a routine kind of response for somebody calling in or writing like this woman did? Or was this individualized for her, or do you know?
In this particular instance, I don't know. But I can tell you in the times that I was in a role that was involved with individual cases, this was the standard practice was to relate the questions to the current prescribing information and advise patients to talk to their own personal physician.
Let me ask you this. What if GSK put in the label that, and you were considering taking Paxil, they had put in their label, we are almost certain that this drug caused a birth defect in a child, and we want you to know that. Would that weigh in your decision about whether or not to take a drug?
Yes, it would contribute to the discussion I would have with my doctor as to whether the benefit would outweigh the risk.
Right. In the documents we've seen, GSK said in this case, this truncus arteriosus was almost certainly related to Paxil, right?
That assessment is entered into the database. I don't know who made that assessment. That assessment is in the database.
With all those disclaimers, qualifications, lawyer objections you want, that's what it says, right?
The point I'm making is I don't know who entered that. If an assessment was, I'm assuming that an assessment was made by somebody, I don't know who that was, and that was entered onto the database.
That's what it says, right?
It's there. I don't know who made that assessment.
Are you uncomfortable with the fact that that assessment was made?
It was made. It's a fact. I don't feel uncomfortable with it.
Every time I ask you about it, you keep saying, I don't know who made it, when I didn't ask you that question. I'm wondering why you keep telling me that.
I think in the statement you made one or two before previously, you said GSK made the assessment that it was related, and I just wanted to clarify that it's in the GSK database as, is it certain? I'm sorry, I can't
almost
remember.
Certain.
Almost certain.
She said just the opposite, didn't she?
There's always the possibility someone made a mistake and checked the box wrong. That's
Mistake.
a possibility.
Okay.
I'm not saying that happened, but it's possible. I don't know if that was a possibility. Maybe that was a default in the database. I don't know.
The default in the database might be that the drug almost certainly caused whatever is being reported.
It's possible. I'm just raising it as a possibility.
Let's talk about the probability. The probability is that somebody at GSK filled that in on the computer. Would you agree with that?
Somebody at GSK filled that in on the computer, definitely.
Nobody from Eli Lilly or Shearing Plow came in there and secretly filled this in.
No,
right?
I definitely that happened. Yes.
And the doctor didn't break into the database of the patient and fill that in and write down or check off almost certain twice, did they?
I don't understand.
Nobody broke into GSK's database?
No.
Okay. You would think if somebody had spoken to the doctor that there would be some notes on that, wouldn't you?
Yes, and that's why I was interested to see this. And I was just saying that just raised a question in my mind when it said report a diagnosis, if any, report a health professional. When I saw that 2 hours ago, it just raised a thought in my mind, did they receive follow-up from a health professional? There's nothing in this file to indicate that happened.
Do you know what a manufacturer's duty is under the FDA when they make a determination that a drug is responsible for an adverse event? What their labeling duties are? I can show it to you if you like.
That would help.
This is from the CFR. This is Exhibit 1214. This is Section 201. 58E. 20157E, sorry. Under warnings, it says, under this section heading, the label shall describe serious adverse reactions and potential safety hazards, limitations in use imposed by them, and steps that should be taken if they occur. The labeling shall be revised to include a warning as soon as there is reasonable evidence of an association of a serious hazard with the drug. A causal relationship need not have been proved. Are you familiar with this?
I would have read this many years ago. So, yes, I've read this before, many years ago.
Okay. Do you know whether GSK revised their label after they made this finding?
I'm not aware if they made a label change, no.
Do you know what happened in late December of 2005 with the Paxil label in pregnancy?
I know after speaking with Ursula in the last 2 days that the label changed.
Do you know that Paxil has been associated with heart defects? Do you know that now?
I know what's in. I know that the label change was made. But beyond that, I hadn't been involved with Paroxetine in pregnancy for many years, so no.
So you don't know, even as we stand here today or sit here today, that Paxil has been associated with specifically heart defects in pregnancy?
As I know the label changed. I don't know the exact wording of the label.
Uh-huh.
But on the last 2 days, my impression has been that that has been related to heart effects.
Do you know
but I don't know what the exact wording is.
Do you know whether truncus arteriosus is a heart defect?
No.